My name is Gonda and Steen, and I'm here as the Koraes chair of the Center for Hellenic Classics. With me is Dr. Athanasios Balermpas, Secretary General of the Greek Ministry of Interior, coming all the way from Athens. On my left-hand side is Dr. Georgios Samaras, who is an assistant professor here in the Department of Government, specializing in public policy, Greek by descent. In case you were going to ask, no connection. And can, of course, add the public side and also draw on his expertise in gender discrimination. And then our very special guest is Dr. Cardaras, who flew in all the way from Athens and who is herself not only director of the Demos Center at the American College of Greece, but an adoptee herself, and she is not the only one in this room. And I find it very important that these voices be heard for what they are themselves, that we do not speak for them. So my task is it then to give you a little bit of historical context, to move from the history of this issue to the present day, and thus prepare the ground for our subsequent speakers. We will each take about 10 minutes, and then, of course, allow for questions. So, for those of you for whom the topic is new, remember that some 4,000 children were sent from Greece to the United States starting in 1950 for adoption by Americans, Greek Americans, any white Americans, and that lasted until 1975. Another 600 were sent from Greece to the Netherlands. They speak Dutch. Somehow I straddle both. They've then been forgotten. This was a history of 4,500 people, of which no records were kept, no lists were kept, no follow-up was done, and that history kind of disappeared. We've actually located 3,000 of them. Not everyone is alive. So you could say then 1950, okay, this is the aftermath of the Civil War, all right? These are orphans of the Civil War, of which there were very many. Yes, that is true for the very beginning of this movement. Orfanato polemo, orfanain filio. But the movement lasted until 1975. That means most children were actually born 1955 and after. And the peak of the movement of sending children for adoption to the US falls between 1956 and 1962. So when the immediate emergency is actually being alleviated already. It immediately raises the question then, why was adoption still considered necessary in such massive numbers? And there is organization behind this, right? There's program behind, there's competition behind this. So the typical profile then of an adoptee back in the day, and an explanation why these adoptions kept happening, an adoptee was typically the exogamo, illegitimate child of a young unwed mother who had no support, not from the community, not from her employer, and occasionally also not from her family. Family could be very harsh on unwed daughters for many long years. So in a typical scenario, then this illegitimate baby is given up for adoption with the consent of the mother, who has, however, no other options and very often feels a lot of pressure from her immediate environment. There was no such thing as single motherhood unless you have exceptional support. And there was also no way to find a job and support yourself and your family. So that makes for a huge group of what the characteristics are of these hundreds of people who left for the United States. Another common scenario is the newest born girl of a big family, sadly so, or of a widow, the newest born girl. But our specialist in the gender divide will elaborate on that. So clearly, when I say illegitimate children and clearly economically stressed families, clearly we've long left the immediate disaster of the Civil War behind. And that is how this movement could last until 1975. Now, for the birth mothers, the first mothers, we come too late. Most of them are no longer alive. They're an absent component in our discussion. But what we do have is the voices of the adoptees themselves and an opportunity to amplify those voices, to let them be heard. And actually, not a week goes by that somebody reaches out to me, finds me via email. That's also how our contact got started, and says, I need some help with the search. I need some help with the record. And and always came that question, and I would so much love to get my Greek citizenship back because I started out Greek, 100% Greek, more Greek than the Greeks Americans I'm surrounded by. So that was always looming there, intensified by COVID and intensified by a recent American president. So that made me then articulate an agenda that I call the 3 Rs: record, research, and restoration of citizenship. But basically, the biggest R of it all is recognition of a homeland by a homeland that let them go, and a path of return, an open embrace, let's say, to reconnect with the homeland that means a lot for them. And remember, they didn't all leave as babies. Some leave at 10 and 14 years old and really perceive this as a rather brisk uprooting from a language, a religion, foods, climate, culture, community, village, you name it. So it was about time then for us to put a team together, because clearly this is not a one woman's undertaking. And I found great help in my partner in the cause, or my partner in crime, Dr. Mary Cardaras, but also Olympia Anastasopoulou and Stephanie Pazzolis, who is in the meantime become our DNA expert. We also draw on a genealogist expert, Gregory Gondos, and we've got support in the Greek American diaspora as well. And then the hurdles came about. We went to see politicians. We went to see Katerina Sakalopoulou herself. We saw a lot of politicians. We go back many years. There were always bureaucratic obstacles. Time went by, months of not hearing anything. We even put together a theater play, and their credit goes to Kyriaki Mitsu for bringing a vision, for making these people come alive on stage, more than any book will ever be able to do. So clearly we needed to do public policy, work for public policy change, but we weren't even at that campaigning level yet. We were still creating knowledge and awareness. And every person would first say, I've never heard of this history. Are you sure there is even anything going on? So anywhere from building knowledge out of nothing, to awareness raising, to listening to the voices and combining the demands, to a signature drive, a play. We pulled out all the stops: interviews, newspapers, more politicians, more visits, until I thought, I was getting a little impatient, which occasionally happens. And I thought, I really need to talk to Mr. Mitsotakis. So I sent an email to Mr. Mitsotakis thinking I'm not going to hear anything. And he extends an invitation. And then I'm thinking, well, I can't go alone. I shouldn't be the one speaking for the adoptees. So I recruit Mary. And so we head over to the Megaro, we explain it, we're given an audience. He has called in the Minister of Interior and other specialists. He was not very familiar with this topic. So again, we're doing awareness raising. And within minutes, he got it. And he says, this is historical injustice, and it shouldn't be difficult to put it right. And we owe it to them. We owe it to them to put it right. If they've been kept in limbo for 60 and 70 years, even looking for their records, then clearly we need to heal that wound, let's say. And we can't repair what may have gone wrong with an adoption, but this is the part of history we can still repair. And he says, I'll make it happen. And we're like, excited, but beware of politicians. You never know what promises mean. So we're kind of guarded. Now, it happened to be the 17th of September 2024. And even though I'm not particularly religious, it was the feast of Sophia, wisdom, faith, hope, and love. And it's a sign. I have to keep hopeful. So sure enough, shortly after Easter this year, the 22nd of April, there is the ministerial decision we've been waiting for. And Dr. Balermpas will fill us in on those months that took preparing the law that finally opens a manageable path for these adoptees to restore their citizenship. And of course, in Greece, a law is official when it becomes published. And sure enough, on the 2nd of May, there was the publication of the law, the preamble of which actually for the first time in print, in official print, recognizes that this adoption movement happened, which is hugely satisfactory. So you may say, well, It's a piece of paper. It's a passport. No, it's therapeutic for the individual who has his questions answered. It brings closure. It is the long-awaited coming full circle of an adoption. It's an open door to your home country and an invitation to stay as long as possible. So it's not only a solution to an individual quest and concern, it's actually also a huge structural shift because many individuals make a structure, and this law approaches legal reform as addressing an issue that a lot of people have in common, and actually leaving a paradigm, an exemplary way of resolving an old communal issue. Leaving a path not only for adoptees to now pursue their citizenship, but also for other diaspora groups to think how they can mobilize to get their concerns addressed. And so, in a way, the adoption diaspora sits in a larger diaspora, which looms very large in Greek history, and can inspire other diaspora groups to now start pursuing their connection, their dialogue with Greece. So I find it very important that we've moved from addressing an individual's desire to a structural shift. And also we've created a bit of a shift in the adoption world because other adoptee groups, the Koreans and the Guatemalans, look at us and say, how did Greece do it? What can we learn from Greece? Because we want the same. We want that same acknowledgement of our first identity. So we've also moved not only from a flow outward of the country, but from a return diaspora. Some people have actually repatriated to Greece. Now, there are other issues of repatriation in this room, but I always felt that people should come before marbles. And it's very satisfying to think that. No, this much from me. I just wanted to give you a little context, and I left it right at the point where Dr. Balermpas can most expertly pick up, because in that silence of 6 months, where we're scratching our head and thinking, is it going to happen? That's when he put his vision to work and resolved it from a legal perspective and met our demands most compassionately. Thank you. Yours.
Good evening to everybody. First of all, I have to apologize for my English, and if I need assist, Professor Van Steen will help me, because I'm from the politicians who believe that accuracy is the thing that we have to express when we address to the citizens. I want to thank Professor Van Steen and King's College for the invitation, and I believe that scientific research has to have an outcome in everyday policies that we adapt and we make happen in order to make the citizens' life better and more functional. Well, Professor Van Steen didn't narrate our first meeting. In 2023, I was serving as Secretary General for Citizenship. And after a phone call from the Presidency of the Republic, we set up an appointment with Professor Van Steen. Also, I had in my office the General Director for Citizenship, a public servant, and the director of my private office, now Professor of History, Dr. Nadia Karakosta. Professor Van Steen expressed she made of our awareness all the problem, and she asked for us to prepare a presidential decree that will give back the citizenship to all these people, and as a group. And the first thing we replied to her is that the only historical coincidence the Hellenic Republic gave their citizenship to a group was in 1922 after the Minor Asia catastrophe disaster and the refugees from Minor Asia and Smyrna. And she didn't like that. Actually,
we
the
don't
passion and the temper was very high. But,
Something happens.
yes, but that was the first, our first knowledge about this issue. And when I changed to Secretary General of the Interior and the governor of the Central Bank of Greece, a friend of mine, Professor Samaras, gave me a call about this issue. I replied to him that these people, the adoptees, were born Greek as Greek citizens. So it's not the jurisdiction of General Secretariat of Citizenship to give them the Greek citizenship, but to activate again, to regain again the Greek citizenship by registered in our national record. And we have to find a solution on this path, on this route. Then the Prime Minister gave us clear instructions to solve this matter. The Prime Minister even today has interest about the development and how many adoptees can register in our records. And we inform him in a regular basis. And I believe that that's why we entered the politics to imagine and to make happen solutions that solves real problems, real life problems. It was not very easy because, as we know, the Greek bureaucracy is very strict, and even politicians such me, who comes from private sector, have to struggle with our public servants to make them to realize the significance of an issue and to work with us in order to find a legal solution. Because a lot of public servants in Greece, they have the fear that only if something it's in a law provision can be happen, not only if something simply is not prohibited. That's as I say, a problem in our country. In our everyday life, anything it's not prohibited, we can do it. But in public life, we have make a strict legal provision in order to persuade the public service to take action. So we work together with public servants, special advisors, lawyers. You have to have lawyers if you are in a position of public service. My lawyers, Mr. Rodopoulos and Mr. Tassoulas. The lawyers from the Minister's Livanios office, Mrs. Georgios and Mrs. Economou. And also the staff of Deputy Minister Spanakis. All together, we collaborated with, of course, with the head of the services to find a coherent route based on the existing laws, based on the existing legal frame we have in order not to present a new legislation, but to evolve the existing legislation to make all of these different cases, because we have various categories of cases, to cover all these needs and to make this happen. The Greek adoptees from 50s, 60s, even 70s to manage to make their registration in our national record and become, of course, great citizens. They never lose their citizenship, because by the Greek law, everybody who has Greek parents, or he was born in Greece, or he or she was born in Greece, and his or her parents didn't manage to give his or her citizenship, becomes Greek citizen automatically. So these people, even they were at the category of ectheta, of non-illegitimate child, they were Greek citizens from the day they were birthed. They were, yes, the day of their birth. So we had to reactivate. We did, then that was my first quarrel with Professor Van Steen. They were not aliens who they have to be naturalized as Greek citizens. They were Greek citizens, and we had to find a way to re-register it to our national record and to become Greek citizens again. It was, let me say that it was a difficult task, but finally we have a ministerial decree that give us a solid ground to make this happen. And as a result, as a conclusion for me, it is very important for us as when we exercise our government power to seek how to help individuals, not only groups, individuals, to solve their life problems. That's the way that politics must function, must work, and that's the way that we have to collaborate with historical or any scientific research, because as we know, science is the only way to have our society in the path of progress and prosperity. So I must thank Professor Van Steen, King's College, thank the scientific community for helping us to solve everyday problems. And I believe that this will be the first step, because as you know, as a Secretary General of the Interior, every day I have a report about the births and the deaths in Greece. Our population is reducing very fast. The projection is that in 2050 we will have the same population we had in 1950. So we are back a century. We will back. My personal political view is that only by our diaspora, our Hellenic diaspora is the only solution to this. We have to transmit a clear message to all Greek origin citizens of the world that the Hellenic Republic, that Greece is willing to help them to have to acquire Greek citizenship, to come to Greece, to work in Greece, to do anything they want, or to do anything they want from any part of the world that they live, but to feel as members of our society, members of the political body of our republic, to feel that everybody we are one, because that's the answer to our problems. Thank you very much.
First of all, I want to thank Professor Van Steen, Gonda, for inviting me to provide some insights, some of my understanding of, the case study that is filled with collective trauma and a
Could you
wider.
stand up,
Yeah,
please?
I can't hear.
First,
Could you speak louder?
just stand up.
No, okay. Again, I want to thank my colleague Gonda for inviting me to provide a better understanding of the whole narrative through a political scientific angle. I'm a political scientist, but I don't often find myself in a room full of the actual people who carry that collective trauma and the lived experience, which is full of really painful memories that no political scientific framework can elaborate on, especially when we have a conversation for an hour. This could take 13 or 14 or 15 hours to discuss, address, maybe weeks in some cases. But I wanted to highlight that the adoption era is a starting point here because Gonda identified the origins and tried this, made this effort to come closer to the lived experience, to the people who have been, again, victims of a state policy that never really existed until now. And since my research is primarily focused on gender and sociological aspects in contemporary Europe, I would like to point out that it's truly striking that a significant share of the children came from poor, unmarried women. This is not just any kind of finding that can be seen in most cases in policy inequality that is inherently linked to the state, but it's your generation that is technically impacted by early forms of patriarchal system in Greece that was taking its shape and led to the disappearance of a whole generation of people that were forced to live with this trauma without proper recognition. And those dynamics are very important because I need to highlight this. It's very, very important that I point this out. We're talking about expandable motherhood. That motherhood is not really important in this case. That motherhood is treated by the system, by the state, as something that is unnecessary or not really valued within the country. I don't know how that feels. I don't know how people who have experienced this can hear those words and I guess just think of the circumstances back then. But I think that when we focus on motherhood here and the illegitimacy of a generation of children that were forced to live through this trauma, we complete the picture of a state that technically legislates in a biopolitical way. And this biopolitical way, and I'm not using this word just to use it, is because we have a state that decides over bodies of people, decides over who gets to basically experience a life, a specific set of benefits under circumstances that back then seemed to be normalized. It's not just the Greek state, of course, it's the church as well, which both uphold and retain a conservative patriarchal moral order. But it's the category of surplus children and core mechanisms that in many cases try to shame unmarried pregnancy and create this core mechanism, which allowed, of course, this hierarchy mobility to exist, to be present, to be normalized, ignored, and ultimately forgotten until, thankfully, some people took over. And of course, there is the aspect of adoption as a stratified transnational reproduction in this case, because adoption is a specialized form of child migration. Thousands of children leave a war-scarred, aid-dependent Greece for the United States and other Western countries. They end up basically facing this narration as a humanitarian rescue, as a rescue that in material terms shifts the burden and future benefits of child rearing from a poorer periphery to richer, poor households, even in the United States and the wider Western world. And it's applied. I'm mentioning this again because I keep emphasizing it, and I think there is no way around it. But we're talking about Greek unmarried low-income women. It's very important. Disciplined and dispossessed through stigma, poverty, and thin welfare provision. In all of this, the Cold War layer really matters because we have the saved Greek child, a child that, again, in the wider story of the US humanitarian interference in Greek gratitude exists. It's that story that helps stabilize Greece's geopolitical alignment and aid relationships. And theoretically, that really matters to us because we have people who are moved and relocated in ways that reproduce core hierarchies under a humanitarian veneer. To connect this to public policy, and I'm going to have to disagree with our state official today, I'm really sorry. I think that we can, of course, identify policy aftershocks. A Greek policy that is characterized by a state that is sluggish, it is flawed, I have to agree. But technically, it's the political will. And it's not, of course, just the current government or the previous government. It's a history of governments that failed to identify those issues, and linking them, of course, back to the 1920s is not really doing any justice to you, to anyone, or to future generations who would be in a position to have to deal with policy blunders. But here we have this policy that goes beyond exploitation and vulnerabilities of single mothers, but not even the recognition, but it shows that it's about morality too. It's about law and practice around illegitimacy, inheritance, parental authority, all reinforced through a patriarchal control and made easier, of course, for families and officials to push women towards this inequality. I'm going to say that decades later, and where we sit right now, where we stand at, and we witness, of course, this discussion, it's really, really eye-opening to see so many faces of people who have faced this inequality, who have gone through this trauma, and they've accepted it, which is, again, very heavy. It's very heavy seeing those faces, like having this interaction face to face with all of you. And I'm in my early 30s. I have not gone through anything in my lifetime that would even be comparable in any way. I don't know how you feel. I don't know how you experienced all of this. So I'm trying also to use some words from my heart to elaborate on this, because all these words about my theoretical understanding of the situation don't really matter in front of the collective trauma, because the collective trauma is what we focus on here. And to conclude my, again, this analysis that I just made, it's more about the groups in society like you that have faced this inequality, groups in society that have no policy-making powers. You required the intervention of people who had some say in the policy-making processes, who had some connections to high office, who could reach the right people to achieve an outcome that was the bare minimum for you. The bare minimum. No one is going to basically come to you and explain to you that there were many other ways to give justice back to the ones who suffered for all of these decades. The bare minimum is basically a recognition of this and, I guess, a correction by the state. It doesn't erase the memories. It doesn't erase the collective trauma. It doesn't change history. And most importantly, it doesn't really give a pardon to the government or to anyone, to the whole Greek state in this case. So these groups in society, like you, who have faced this inequality, deserve not just more support and an understanding by the state, but a rigorous, continuous public policy framework building that will ensure that this will never happen again to anyone. Thank you very much.
Will stand up because I'm a shrimp. Sit lower than everybody else. Thank you for coming today. Thank you to King's College for inviting me. Thank you to Honda Van Steen and the panel for standing with me today. Forgive my notes, but I don't want to leave anything out about me. So I've noted everything down here. I am 70 years old now, soon to be 71, but I will always be baby number 444 88. My story is typical, but for the 4,000 of us, we each have our own uniqueness in this adoption story. I came from a poor teenage unwed mother. She was thrown out of her village. She was thrown out of her family. And by the way, she never went back. And somehow, alone and pregnant, she makes her way to Athens and gives birth to me in the maternity hospital that no longer exists there. For 9 days after my birth, it's a mystery to me. I don't know where she went. I don't know with whom she was. But we were together for 9 days. And on the 9th day after my birth, she finds her way to the Vrefocomio Athinon, the large orphanage in Athens. She signs me into the orphanage, and that is the last time she saw me. I am her only child. She never married. My maternal grandparents, my adoptive maternal grandparents, are the ones who are responsible for my adoption. I'm not quite sure why that happened. But they came to Greece and came to Greece often. My grandfather is from Lefkada, and my grandmother's from Ithaki, and they have family there, and they returned again and again. And so they went to Greece for a baby for their childless daughter and her husband. They handled the adoption, and brought me to the United States to my new family. And that is, and everybody asks me, why your grandparents? Why didn't your mother come for you and choose you? But my grandmother tells a great story that I love. You know, we have so few stories of us as babies. But my grandmother says that there were, she says, maybe 100 or 200 babies in that orphanage. There were 2 and sometimes 3 to a crib. And the day they arrived, they were walking down the rows of cribs, and everyone was sleeping except me. She said, would pick myself up on my and watch them go by. And they wanted a girl, but she said, we don't care if it's a boy or a girl. That baby wants us, and that's how they chose me. I was, a grateful adoptee, but I was most grateful for the fact that I did not lose my religion. I did not lose my culture. I did not lose being Greek by being adopted by non-Greeks. And I can't tell you how it was my only connection to the country. And so for that, I was happy. And so many of us don't have that. They're getting citizenship now, but they don't have that visceral connection to the country. I was also taken to a very large Greek family that was very close, and a very large Greek community near Chicago. I was raised in Gary, Indiana, just south of Chicago. And that also was wonderful. But our birth mothers carry a stigma. And I have to say that we also carry a stigma, and we carry the stigma forever. I hate to say it, but we do. I am forever and will be forever the adopted baby from Greece. That's how I was introduced. That's who I was. That's who I still am. And I'm here with you now as that person. We came into new families, but we were never of that family. Our lineage isn't theirs. Our medical histories aren't theirs. There is always something missing. always, even though we have a good circumstance and a good adoption. I should also say, which is really kind of incredible, there was never a home visit done for my family. In other words, I could have gone to anybody. Nobody checked out my parents. I just was taken out of an orphanage and taken to the United States. And it was the luck of the draw. Thank God they were amazing parents. The reason I can't see is because I don't have my glasses on. Sorry. There is always a longing to know who we are and from whom we come. After a lifetime of accepting that I will never have all the answers, I do now understand past behaviors and feelings, why I reacted to certain things all of my life from the time I was a little girl. I have to say that my life changed after my surviving parent died. My mother died after my father. And I don't think I have ever felt that kind of grief in my life. I was just knocked out. And I realized, I was alone. I didn't have any parents anymore. And she was my grandparent. She was my mother, and now gone. And you almost feel a sense of abandonment again. And I think I did. So what do? I'm not a religious person, but I go to church. I go back to church because I want to sort of immerse myself in the culture. I want to hear the language. I just want to be with Greek people. And I also went to Greek school, which was great. Reconnecting with my culture in any way I could. And in that class of students, adult learners of the Greek language, I meet a woman named Kathy Kearns. And we got to know each other. We became friends. And she said, I said, yes, I'm adopted. And she said, oh, my cousin is adopted. And she told me her story. And I couldn't believe the story. It was the story of a stolen baby from Greece. And I wrote a book about it called Ripped at the Root, because I was shocked at this woman's story. And for me, Dina Poulias is ground zero. She was stolen from parents and a family. She was raised by American parents as an only child, only to find out that her parents were alive and well. She had 27 first cousins in Greece. It was incredible. Anyway, in researching the book that I was to write about her, I wrote to some scholar named Honda van Steen. And I thought to myself, she's never going to answer me. And I got an email back the next day from Honda van Steen because I needed to check out some information. I was about to implicate an organization, and I wanted to make sure that I was appropriate. And I read her book, of course, but I don't see myself in it. And then finally something dawned on me, and I said, wait a second, are you telling me I'm one of these babies? And she said, you're one of these babies. I couldn't believe it. I had never heard the history. Nobody told me the history until Honda van Steen. And so I'm grateful. I'm grateful to you for that. I'm going to fast forward now. I also want to say I wouldn't be here were it not for you. No, I wouldn't be standing here were it not for you. Quite a journey. Fast forward to now. I'm improving society because I have repatriated to my birth country, and I'm very happy to have done so. I went back to Greece with a brand new job. I'm very, very happy there. I have learned that we adoptees were severed from our country and from our families. Our citizenship was taken the minute we left the country. I know you say that we were always citizens, but they took our passports and we became, by law, somebody else's family. We had families before. And even though our family histories before were short, we had families, we had history. We had mothers who missed us, and I'd like to think that they never forgot us. I'd like to think that mine never forgot me. We needed to change the course of our own destinies. And so we began a campaign called Nostos for Greek-born adoptees with Honda and others. And I put a petition up there and nobody signed it. I was appealing to the government. And then somebody said to me, have you looked at your petition lately? Because something's happening. We ended up with 75,176 signatures to date from adoptees and their supporters all over the world. A meeting with the Prime Minister happened, which Honda alluded to. And he was kind and sensitive. And Zoe has brought one of the blue passports. I gave him my original baby blue passport. And he just was fascinated by that passport. He heard us and he helped us. Many meetings with Mr. Balermpas happened. He heard us. He helped us. He's still helping us. A new law was passed in record time, as we were talking about, which provides a pathway for us to restore our citizenship. Orphanages and social service agencies around Greece now are giving us our records. And slowly, we adoptees are getting their citizenships and their passports restored. It means identity. Of course, it means identity, but it means that we are welcomed home, that we're restored, that we're wanted, for lack of a better word. And I do feel wanted, for sure. A brief postscript, because I think it's important to say it. I never met my birth mother. She died a year before I could get to her. I learned what I did learn. I mean, I did visit her grave and her village. I met her friends. I met her, my half uncle. I met two half cousins. I met her caretaker, who told me she was an angel. And that made me feel good to know that she was an angel. She changed her name. She was so wounded that she changed her whole persona and her name. And she took a name that I find meaning in. She took my first name as hers. And she did meet my grandfather. And so I'm assuming my grandfather told her what my name would be, because I went into the orphanage nameless. But she took my name as her first, and she took a last name that reflected my father's name. And she told everybody, nobody knew about me. She didn't tell anybody about me. And then she started telling people that she was adopted. And she wasn't. But for me, it was a way that she carried that with her. And that gives me a little bit of comfort. I'm here to pay tribute to the birth mothers who could not hold on to us because they didn't have any support to do it. But I'd like to believe that they would have wanted to keep us if they could. Also, I'm here for 4,000 other adoptees who need to be seen and heard. Thank you.
need to break the spell and ask for questions, but I'm sure there are. So let's take your questions and, or do we ask for a few minutes? Yes, please.
Just one remark. A part of the humanitarian aspect of this issue, I have to say a few words about the political, as a public
Please stand up.
policies, as a public
Stand up.
policy, yes. As a public policy and as a political matter. Professor said, and he's right, that the state must have a solid and strong policies to protect all the weak members of the society, but we cannot extract these facts from their historical frame. Everybody, I'm not a sociologist, I'm not an anthropologist, and I'm not a political science. I'm a teacher of literature. But we all know that back in the 50s, after the Civil War and the occupation and the Second World War, back in 50s and in 60s, the problems of the Greek society, the children who were given as to be adopted by United States citizens, Netherlands citizens, they were seen as that they saved from the poverty and the stigma, of course. We don't judge the procedures, but let me tell you that to acknowledge the problem, to have the empathy, to recognize that there is a depth of the state to these citizens, and to make form a political solution, not peace. And that difference, the governments, the parties, and the politicians. After all the politicians are human beings, are persons that they have their backgrounds, they have their concerns, they have the vision how they will how they impact society. So yes, of course, but let us think the Greece in 50s and in 60s. Let us think the Greece even 10 years ago, and how Greece stands now, the society, and this is the important thing to keep in our mind, because and at the end, the people must decide who want to take care of its public affairs and to make roots to the future. So I want again to say that this government, this Ministry of the Interior, the Hellenic Republic, wants to embrace all the Greek origin people who live abroad, and to make them feel that our country and our state is prepared to help them, to bring them near, and to bring them in, actually, and to help them to acquire their citizenship, because we need them. And we believe that with them, we have a good future in the next decades. Thank you.
The lady who just said this, yes, please stand up.
This all was new to me, so I'm finding it a very, not only interesting but very moving experience. Something I would like to know though, who funded these orphanages and what role the church played in the whole process?
Right. Most of these orphanages that sent children to the US were overcrowded and funded by the state. So there is immediate pressure to face the overcrowding problem, and adoption to the US was a solution. The church, and I know that we may all be comparing with Ireland or so, the role of the church in Greece is much, much smaller. The Greek Orthodox Church never played the kind of punitive role that the Catholic Church played in Ireland. In fact, stigma and taboos are more easily, and pressure is more easily raised within the family and the village, and less so within the church. So these orphanages are not necessarily even church run. Most of them are state run, and that also makes the children public charges, right? In an era where funding and resources are very stretched in the 1950s. That is something to consider. Yeah. Oh my, many questions. The yellow slide.
Yeah, I need to ask whether these American families had to pay for the children, whether these children were in a way bought from the state, so this was an income for the state, for the Greek state.
You don't pay for the child, you pay exorbitant fees to make the adoption happen, which is an indirect way of funneling a certain.
But whom do you pay?
You pay the intermediaries, the lawyers. The lawyers are really and in fact, the lawyers competing with each other who cultivate the clientele. And so, yeah, the lawyers are the ones, not the first mothers, not the families. The orphanage gets donations and actually quite likes that. Mind you, in American dollars, which is the strong currency in the 1950s. But if there is any money being handled here that exceeds what it normally should cost, then it goes in the pockets of intermediaries, lawyers. I'm going to give a question to Kevin Featherstone here. Yeah.
Thank you. Like other people, it's been a real privilege to hear this presentation, and I think we are in awe of the kind of activity that Gonda and her colleagues have undertaken.
A little louder, Kevin, because.
It's been a real privilege to hear the story, and I offer my fulsome congratulations to my academic colleague for her work. But just ask a really rather nerdy technical question. I didn't fully understand why your original proposal for a presidential decree was not acceptable, but the solution eventually, if I understood correctly, was a ministerial decree, or was it legislation?
That is a question for Dr. Balermpas.
Yes. I mean, I understand the Asia Minor connotation, but just technically today.
Under the Greek law for citizenship, which the law that makes everybody born by Greek parents Greek citizens, my daughters who are present here, they became automatically Greek citizens after their birth, because of this law for citizenship. So this law, the meaning of this law is to see every citizenship individually, not for groups. Even the people who came from former Soviet Union were refugees of the years 20 to 30 these decades, and they choose to go to Soviet Union instead to come to Greece. Even these people, the citizenship was given individually, checking their background and their documentation. So a presidential decree that acquires citizenship in a group, it's against the philosophy of the Greek law. It's a code, actually, Greek code for citizenship. And we have to check in every situation, every individually. So that was the answer. But my, let's say, political thesis on this matter is that it is not the job for General Secretariat for Citizenship to attend this matter, to take care of this matter, but the General Secretariat of the Interior, because these people were born Greeks. And even they have lost their citizenship by American law, the Greek law also has the provision that if you are not the same person who asks to renounce, yes, your citizenship stands. Yes, after all, the citizenship law is jus sanguinis, is the right of the blood. So these people who are adopted by foreigners, even the new family has to renounce their citizenship. If they didn't do it themselves, that's not stands for the Greek law. It's a matter of, you see, it's a matter of historical and legal obligation of the state to protect the citizenship of their citizens. That was my personal political approach to this matter. Then when I was responsible for the new Secretariat for the Interior, I found the route in order to the civil servant to feel that that was on a legal basis and to be effective, of course. That's why we are monitoring all the situations individually again, how they go to the municipalities and how the municipalities get them register them in their records. We are still monitoring, and even when we see that we have problems in the municipalities, they have let's say rejections, etc. We interfere and we help them to see how this legislation must be practiced. Thank you.
Thank you. I see many questions, but if I may take the gentleman here, please. And then I'm going to direct questions to Georgios and Mary, so we divide it a bit equally. Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm Eric Fripp. I'm a lawyer with a particular interest in international law and practice concerning nationality. And in terms of that practice in the Greek example here, as I understand it, those born in Greece are Greek citizens ius sanguinis. That's never lost under Greek law. And so
Born of Greek parents, not just born in Greece.
Yeah.
Lineage.
Yes, ius sanguinis. So what is the problem that has to be addressed? Is it an issue of birth registration or availment of procedures? Or is it something else that is the obstacle to those people who have a continuing ius sanguinis citizenship to avail themselves and practice of it?
Yes. Very good question. You see, as Professor Steen showed us from her research, the records, some records, they have been lost. We didn't have legal procedures of adoptions. So the documentation was not the proper documentation that the former legal frame required. So we had to find new routes of and new documents, even from churches, even from orphans and other, let's say, not authorities, but from other sources to prove that they were in this category. So we have to improvise sometimes and to become more imaginative. That is not the public service in Greece. I guarantee you, we have to, let's say, push them to this. And so that's I think that's it's a useful outcome of all this for other circumstances.
Yeah, if I may add a footnote to that, very often these people who tried before the new law would be asked for a birth certificate, which is a reasonable request, right? But not if you're a foundling. There is no birth certificate. There will never be a birth certificate.
Actually, the mayor or the
The community.
The community authority have to produce a birth certificate of a foundling. Yes, but sometimes, in 50s, the Greece was in ruins actually, and sometimes the authorities not even rich villages, they were isolated. So we have lack documentation, and we have to take care of it.
Yeah. Good.
One more question here.
Katerina.
Yeah.
Because you said.
Sorry. Oh,
Okay, I thought you ignored me. I am 85, so I'm much older than you. And I would like to make a statement rather than ask a question.
Okay.
I lived in a city called Katerini, area. And the city of Katerini has got the biggest evangelical church in the whole of Greece.
Yeah. I know it well, yeah.
And there was a very big orphanage. And I was there as a teacher in the 60s. And I remember very well, people from America, but not only from America, used to come to the church, and they used to go to the orphanage, and they used to pick a child without any documentations, and they would go to America. My own sister-in-law was taken to Belgium when she was 15 and a half. So what I would try to say is, if we can actually go to that orphanage and find out what happened to all these kids. I was born in Alexandria in Egypt. And in those days, in the 50s, a lot of Greeks went to Australia.
Yeah.
Because Greece didn't have enough space for the Greeks of Alexandria to be settled in Greece. Those people became Australians. Melbourne is the second biggest city of Greece. It's bigger than the majority of people in Australia are Greeks.
Is your question then how we can reconstruct the adoption history of the orphanage of Katerini? Is that the question?
I would like somebody to go to the orphanage. I'm very happy to go with you.
I have good news. I've already been there. Now, I found some of these older, most of them were older, and they actually are part of a cluster of people living in Los Angeles, and they all talk to each other. And they all have found each other, and they all keep in touch. And of course, I have to be discreet about the names, but you would be surprised, and that kept surprising me from the very beginning. They found me, but more than that, they found each other, because they want people with shared experience. They will, in a way, use me, if you want, to tell me, let me find the others. They want to find each other. If you don't have family, this is your orphanage family. So they exist, they're thriving, they communicate with each other, and yes, their roots lead back to the evangelical orphanage church run of Katerini, which is actually, in terms of church terms, one of the exceptions.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you.
And let me tell something. I was a month ago, I visited Australia for 15 days. We went to Melbourne in order to find out the ways to help of Greek origin citizens of Australia to become Greek citizens. The problem is that when the immigration took place before the birthplace become part of the Greek state, they cannot be registered. because their fathers or their grandfathers, grandparents, they were not Greek citizens technically, but they can use the root of Article 10 by naturalization as homogeneous, as co-patrons. So we have answered to this problem.
I want to give one last question. I know you're brimming with questions, but we also have a little drinks reception. But I do want to give the last word to Katerina.
Thank you very much.
Experience is.
Thank you so much.
Stand up, Katerina.
Yes, the question is for Georgios. How far away we are from these tragic events, meaning that have we set up the right mechanism? And these events are not happening as we speak, because we know that around the world, genocide, civil wars are happening.
I guess that was my main effort when I started explaining some aspects of my understanding of the scandal, because in my view, it's a policy scandal that expands to so many different areas. Well, that everyone can hear me, by the way. Again, the connections are there, and we cannot really avoid drawing comparisons because of the similarities when it comes to human tragedy. And human tragedy, of course, can take many different forms. In this case, collective trauma because of people who were the victims of a system that did not really care for them. And this goes back to the bipolitical discussion. I'm a big fan of Foucault, so I often like bringing him up whenever we have more political philosophical conversations. In my opinion, here, it's a de facto case of the state legislating over human bodies. And any kind of tragedy has that underlying framework, an effort to legislate a nation based on the right of some groups to exist and other rights not to exist. The tragedy levels are different. We can compare, of course, the ongoing genocide in Palestine to a policy scandal in the 20s, but the idea that the state has the right to do this is something that we're facing more and more as a question, and an answer doesn't really exist yet in the policy realm. Look, for example, at calls to have a wealth tax implemented in society to go after the billionaires. This is a problem when it comes to the livelihood of working class people experiencing, societal tragedy that is the result of high levels of inequality. So different levels. Ultimately, the policy, again, distance from the actual memories from the 20s is significant. Hence why the scandal was not really exposed until now, which demonstrates that the further, the memory is, the more distance is created. So we don't have an understanding of those policy, I would say, connections. But in the end, when we look at the 50s and 60s and 70s, and your understanding of that era, we can definitely draw those comparisons looking at how bodies are being managed by the state and how political the dimension is when it comes to fixing and providing straightforward solutions to those issues. I don't want to refer this as a utopia because I believe in a fair and straightforward state that looks after its own citizens, but I can't really dismiss the idea of the bipolitical dimension, which Foucault accurately brought up in his research.
I know you have a lot to say, but I am going to give the last word to an adoptee, which is important.
Hey,
So stand up, Zoe. Come.
I'm very interested in what you have to say about there needs to be more empathy dealing with the collective trauma. Thank you very much. I have my Greek citizenship, which I don't think I ever lost. I have my Kingdom of Greece passport that I had for 5 years using it. So I was a citizen till I was 5 and then got my first. What I would say is I have recently found my adopted mother, my birth mother has passed, and I know that my birth father is still alive. He's 90. I'm 62. I went to the village in the Peloponnese with my brother, and we met some of my biological first cousins. And it was really interesting. I wanted to know what my birth mother's life had been like and what had happened to her and being banished, because she too was banished, whether it had defined her, and it had. Now, I have tried subsequently to have a meeting with my birth father. He has 3 other daughters, and suddenly this whole village where the two families didn't speak together since the 1960s. It's opened up old wounds, and they are starting not to speak to each other again. And, you know, each side, I get, you know, from my biological cousins, they're phoning and saying, oh, I met so-and-so, he laughed, he said, should I get in touch with your birth father? And it's just a nightmare. So I think that whatever is done on a political level, I think like everything, it takes a lot of time to change and to educate, and society has completely changed since 1962, but it still needs some changing to get rid of this.
Want to come and mingle and ask further questions? And sorry, we couldn't take all the questions, but thank you for participating.